Let's start with transitioning from the art world into winemaking. Could you tell me a little bit about that? Were both you and your husband in the art world, or?
Well, I'm from Lisbon. My husband is from Mouraz, where is Casa de Mouraz. Mouraz is a very small village with 140 persons only. It's very, very small. My husband was born in Mouraz, but he studied in Lisbon. He studied law in Lisbon. And when he was in the university, he started to work in an art magazine called Número magazine. It was an art magazine that spoke about music and art and painter and dance and theater, but very contemporary. And in that time, I was a dance teacher. Because I have a background in sociology, but also in dance, and I was a dance teacher in that time in Lisbon. I did some classes and worked with children with very hard neighbors.
Neighborhood?
Neighborhood, yes, like with problems, like economical problems, and I was in a lot of projects working with with dance to help these kids, to be more interested in the school and all of this. It was very nice, I was working in that. I was also performing a little, but very off, like not very in big companies, only in very small projects, because I'm not a dancer. I was more like a teacher. One day in Portugal there were a big movement of contemporary dance in Portugal called the Nova Dança Portuguesa. It was a very good movement in dance, that they were showing everywhere, in New York and a lot of countries. And Antonio was in the organization with this magazine about the 10 years of this Nova Dança Portuguesa. That's new dance, Portuguese new dance. The book was about these 10 years of Portuguese new dance. And I was also participating in this book. That's why I met my husband, Antonio. I never, in that time, I didn't imagine that he was already like a farmer and that he wanted to be a wine producer, because in that time he was only a farmer, because they had the vineyards. It's old vineyards, a lot of old 40 years old and 50 years old, but at that time they sell the grapes to the cooperative of Tondela, because the father of my husband, he was a co-founder of the cooperative, and he was already working in the vineyards to help his father, Antonio, my husband. He was working there because one part of the year he was in Lisbon, one part he was there in Mouraz, helping his father, because his father was already very old. Now he's still alive. He has 91 years old, and. But he was doing this already in organic, because when in the beginning of the 90s, my husband was very interested in the organic movement. He didn't know a lot about that, because in Portugal it was a very new thing. But he was very interested about ecology, and he started to make the transition in the vineyards to this organic farming, a little against against his father, because his father at that time was a little sick and he cannot go to work in the vineyards, and he started to make this transition. It was very difficult in the beginning, because he didn't know a lot about technical aspects of organic farming, and he was experimenting. And he lost a lot in terms of production in that time, and his father was not very happy with his. But the time was passing, and Antonio started to learn more, and Well, in all these decades of the 90s, he was doing the organic work, organic farming, but he was selling the grapes to the cooperative. And when we were living in Lisbon, in that time when I met him, one day he told me that he would like one of his dreams will be to do a wine, and well, it was my first. Discovered that he has these vineyards and all of this. Well, and after with the time, one day he thought, well, it's this year that I'm going to try to make the wine myself, and it was in 2000. We did the first with our label in 2000. It was in another winery because the winery that we have in the house was completely destroyed already. And we found another winery. We made this first vintage, 2000. And after that, well, we were still living in Lisbon at that time. It was a little crazy because he was in Lisbon. After he had to go to Mouraz. It's 300 kilometers, more or less. And in 2001, we still were in Lisbon. But in 2002, we stopped our work in Lisbon and we went to Mouraz to live there all the time.
Time out one second.
Yeah.